Welcome back to Knowledge Resources Author Insights. Today, we're sitting down with Nene Molefi. Nene is the author of A Journey of Diversity and Inclusion in South Africa, Guidelines for Leading Inclusivity. She's also the CEO at Mandate Molefi Consultants, an expert in leadership and an internationally regarded industry leader in HR and transformation. Nene, you've worked with many organizations in South Africa and abroad. What would you say is the first thing that has to be in place for leaders when they want to have a productive, authentic conversation about diversity and inclusion?
I think the first thing is the willingness to create psychological safety, because the topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion can be emotive. It can be scary for people. And if you want people to express themselves authentically, they need to know that there's a atmosphere, there's a culture of safety. That will not be comebacks. And the word for me is actually the foundation if you want a robust conversation.
Nene, I'm so sorry. It does seem that your video and audio is not coming through that well. Is there possibly a problem on my side with the signal? It seems to be okay on my side.
Amy?
Sorry. There seems to be a problem with the signal. It looks to be quite stable on my side. Are you?
Can I go downstairs? Give me a minute. We'll just have to restart. Let me go downstairs. There's a better signal there.
Okay, perfect.
Then. How is the connection now?
It sounds a lot better. Maybe we should see with the camera on.
Yeah, just give me a minute.
No worries. Are you having a good week, Nene? Is everything going well?
Yeah, busy week as usual.
I think you are the CEO of your own company, so I would understand.
Yes, I am.
Perfect. That does seem a lot better. Does it sound better, feel better for you?
Yeah, from my side, it does sound better.
Okay, perfect. So I think let's go forward. If the signal does give any more problems, we'll just switch to a purely audio thing and we'll write an article or use just segments of the audio.
Okay.
Perfect. So I think let's maybe just go through that question again. I'd like to ask you what has to be in place for leaders to have a productive, authentic conversation about leadership or about diversity and inclusivity, sorry.
You know, what is paramount is for, and this I'm realizing increasingly in the past 2 or so years, that if you really want an honest conversation on diversity, equity, and inclusion, you need to ensure as a leader that there is adequate psychological safety. And psychological safety means creating a culture where people know that they will not be humiliated, there will not be any comebacks for them to speak openly and speak their mind, because often that's the problem. leaders would say to people, just tell me exactly what you think. And then people open up. And then after that, there are comebacks. So you need to ensure that there is psychological safety before you can go deep into this topic.
And why would you say it's so important to have this topic? You have this incredible quote in your book, "We underestimate the power of acknowledging the truth." Why would you say it's so important for organizations to do that, to acknowledge the truth and to have these conversations?
Yes, because if you don't, you can always get people who give you, sort of what they think you want to hear as a leader. And then during lunchtime, when they sit with their friends, with their colleagues, or in the passages, then the real truth comes out. And it doesn't help for you as a leader to think that people are open and honest with you, and yet there's some level of fear. So for you to get the truth, that's when you see that people are bringing their whole self to work. And that's where their potential can actually be at their peak. So if there's something that they're fearful of, you're not getting the 100% of your employees.
And your book is so interesting in that regard because it's very practical and yet so personal, filled with a lot of personal insights from you as well. Could you just take us through your approach to this book and what inspired you? Why did you end up writing this instructional book?
For me, the most, you laugh at this, the most, uppermost in my reason for writing a book. I would often find people visiting, the topic of diversity and inclusion. There's a lot of books more in the US or in the UK about this topic, mainly in the US. And in South Africa, there weren't as many books that were authored by South Africans. And I was saying, even all of us, when you're sitting there, we all have our diversity stories, because diversity is about the differences and the similarities inside your home, in your community, in your school, your university, and the workplace. So all of us have diversity stories. And it used to really not sit well with me to see somebody visiting our country for 3 months and suddenly writing a whole story about diversity in South Africa, and they haven't really had a lived experience. So I said, I have a lived experience. I have worked through many organizations on this topic. And even if I didn't work, just by living in Soweto, in South Africa, I have an experience of diversity and inclusion. And that for me supported and was really at the uppermost reasons why I wrote a book.
I think just personally, all these personal approaches that you take to the book, many people in South Africa, as you say, have personal experiences in this area. And I think that's what makes it so difficult. And sometimes managers find it difficult to approach it, which is why your practical advice is so valuable, I think. And I'd like to zoom in on this a little bit. Is everything fine?
Yeah, everything is okay.
Okay, great. I'd like to zoom in on this a little bit, just taking a look at one of your first pieces of advice, which is to unzip your suitcase and rewrite childhood narratives. Could you just take us through this exercise as an example?
Yes. Do you know that every single person, they might not admit it, but in their homes, behind closed doors, they know that there are stories that their parents tell them about people who are different from them. Most of the time, these are not positive stories. And I'm not blaming parents. I often say that 85% of what my parents taught me, I love it and I treasure that. But the balance of that, of what they taught me, I think for me, I need to unzip and unlearn, throw out what they taught me, because they taught me what they thought they knew best. So I'm not blaming them. All I'm saying is that we all get delegated stories from our parents or our guardians. So it's so important to unzip. When you become adult now, you have to say, fine, this is what I was taught, but this is what I can experience. And the only way to do that is, instead of lumping everyone in the same bucket, instead of saying all white women are like this, let me experience you. Let me have a relationship with you so that I know you as a person. I don't know you as this part of the bucket, because then even if you're trying your best, let's say you are really doing your personal work around diversity and inclusion, I've already lumped you. I'm assuming that this is how you are, this is who you are, I've written you off, or you can do the same with me. So I think the unzipping this suitcase and rewriting childhood narratives is important, not only about people who are different from us, but also about some stories we have believed about ourselves. If I grew up and I've believed a story about women are less than, women have to do household chores, women are the ones who have to wash dishes as we grow up, that gets cemented in me. And when I grow up and I'm in a boardroom, somebody suddenly says to me, do you mind pouring tea for me? Even if we're on the same level. That is why some people still fall in the trap, and they do make the tea, right? And we are both managers in an organization. And it's because we haven't opened that suitcase to say, I need to rewrite the story. And I bought a story which is not correct about women.
I think that's only one of the valuable lessons in your book as well, and just an example of the practical ways managers can approach it. I'd like to ask you as well, you speak a lot about mentors and the support that you had throughout your life in your book, and how the managers and leaders in organizations actually created an enabling environment. What environment do you think is necessary today? What should managers be focusing on today?
Firstly, I think managers need to lean into vulnerability and admit that they didn't get to the top just because they're intelligent or on their own. Somebody held their hands. First and foremost, I need to, as a leader, to say, you know what, I got where I got. Yes, I got educated. Yes, I've got a degree or whatever you have. But I also was held by someone. I was mentored by someone. I was sponsored by someone. We tend to create this atmosphere like, I got here all by myself. It is all my hard work. And by doing that, we're making it difficult for those who are still coming up to say, hey, I've tried everything that I can, but I'm still not getting there. We just need to be open that no one gets to the top on their own. You actually exist within a pool of support system that elevate you there. So an atmosphere of creating mentors, of creating sponsors, is to say, how do I pay it back? How do I ensure that I also hold somebody else's hand and make sure that their careers also are successful? By doing this, you're not saying we must spoon feed people. We are not saying you must take people who are not qualified. We are talking about people who are already qualified for their jobs from their diplomas or degrees. And then we're saying, what is that extra that you need to put in? The extra that I received is that there were mentors who were willing to hold my hand. And that's what we should say. Let's just be honest and tell the right stories.
Very encouraging, I think, as well. Just as a closing question, I'd like to ask you, do you think the transformation conversation has changed since 1994, and where would you like it to go in future?
I think the transformation narrative is changing, but firstly, I want to comment about what I do not like first is that you often see people who say, when you hear the word transformation, they just don't want to hear about it because they said this has been misinterpreted and whatever word you use, transformation needs to happen, right? So as a leader, for me, is that, it's not a cliche that everything starts with leadership. If you have a leader who does not believe in transformation, I can tell you now, Amy, I can show it to you. If I walk into a department or a business unit and the leader does not believe in transformation, you can see it in the way people disregard this important thing. So as leaders, we should not underestimate our role, that we need to lead from the front. We need to set a vision for transformation. When we talk transformation, what do we mean for purposes of our own company, our department, that this is, how will it look like when it's done? And you need to say it with your mouth. You need to say, I support transformation. Yes, it's difficult. Yes, it's not easy, but you need to support it not just with what you say, but your actions must show that you believe in it and you are willing to give it support. And support means budget, means people, means also your own narrative around the way, because you can throw people with as much money as you like, but if you're not supporting them and also ensuring that you back them with their statements, because you will agree with me, transformation is not easy. So if my own leader is not supporting me, everyone will know that this is Nene's story on her own. So we need leadership support, we need a vision, and we need them to measure and be accountable and measure the successes and tell people when it has been successful, and also deal with the consequences of those who are not succeeding.
Thank you so much, Nene. This has been a very insightful talk into diversity, inclusion, as well as your book itself. The book is available at select stores and online, as well as being linked in the description below. So be sure to get your copy and just find out about how you can be a better leader in this new South Africa and move forward with positivity. Thank you so much for joining me, Nene.
Thank you, Amy.